Jesus knows that this is the last week of his life on earth. He knows he's going to the cross. The disciples haven't quite figured that out yet, but Jesus knows what's about to happen, and because he knows he's not going to be here much longer, just as we said upstairs, he wants to have like a final meal with his friends. He says a very strange thing. Anyone know what he says? And we read about it earlier. Ernie, do you know what he says?
That someone's going to betray him.
Great answer, Ernie. Really good answer. Someone's going to betray me, he says. They're thinking to themselves, we've spent 3 years with Jesus. He's like our friend. He's like family. We've watched him do incredible things. We've watched him do marvellous things, heal people. We've listened to his teaching. We know he has the words of God. Why would somebody want to betray him? I think their reaction was a bit like this. How do you think you'd react if you heard that someone was going to betray you? You see, sweet. They all sit back like this, amazed. It's what we call recoiling. And so one by one, they say to him, is it me, Lord? Am I the one who's going to betray you? Now, you might think that's a funny thing to say, but when you're a Christian, it's often a good thing to look inside yourself first and say, like they said in the Psalms, Lord, tell me if there's anything in me that's offensive to you. Tell me if there's anything I'm doing that I shouldn't be doing. So it's good for a Christian, it shows real maturity when we look inside our own hearts and say, am I the one who's doing something wrong, Lord? Rather than point to somebody else. Now, do you notice all the disciples aren't saying, I think we know who it is. It's that guy over there. No, every one of them said, is it me, Lord? Am I the one? But do you notice when all these disciples were kind of shocked and when they all moved back, there was one who didn't move because he wasn't shocked. Which one didn't move? Eden, which one didn't move?
That one right there in the corner.
This guy here in the corner. Okay. What is his name? Anyone remember his name?
Judas.
Judas, Ernie. Excellent. Judas is there. Now, he doesn't look shocked, does he? What kind of look has he got in his face? He's kind of looking a bit like, I do know, he knows what I'm about to do. And Jesus says something, because Judas also says, is it me, Lord? Hoping that he'll try and fool Jesus. And Jesus says, yes, it is you, Judas. He says to all of the disciples, it would be better for that man if he had never been born. Well, that's a terrible thing to say, isn't it? To say it would have been better if he hadn't been born, rather than to betray the Son of God. So Jesus, I know he loved Judas, but he's having to say pretty openly, Judas has done a bad thing. He's about to do a very bad thing. Now, if you were Judas and you heard, wow, it would have been better if I hadn't been born, that shows that there's going to be consequences for Judas. Now, if you were Judas, what would you do then? What would you do you think? John? Apologise. Yeah, you'd say, Lord, okay, I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry. The plans I've made, I'm not going to do them. But does Judas do that? He has a chance to do the right thing, but he doesn't. Instead, the Bible says he just quietly slips away. He goes away out of the door. Where does he go? Where's he off to? Who's he going to go and see? He's going to see the Pharisees, and he's going to arrange with them how he can betray Jesus. So, isn't it sad when people put money ahead of their faith? When they say, Lord, I love you very much, but money's more important to me. And he's prepared even to betray his Lord. But isn't it also amazing that somebody, you can think they're a believer, you can spend 3 years with them, and suddenly it turns out that maybe their heart wasn't very close to God after all. And it's a good thing to ask God, isn't it? A good way to come before him and say, Lord, help me to do the right thing. And they realised that it wasn't them. All the guys sat back up again. And once Judas had gone, then I think Jesus, he wants to give them something to remember him by. While they were eating, so it wasn't the meal in itself, it's during the meal, while they were eating, Jesus took some bread. We've got some pretty luminous looking bread here, okay? So there's his bread. He's got this big, because if there's 12 guys plus Jesus, that's a lot of bread they need. So he's got a big loaf of bread. While they were eating, Jesus took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, take and eat. This is my body. Well, you're thinking, his body? Well, what he means is, it's not his real flesh. He's not giving anyone his food to eat, because everyone knows you can't do that. But he's saying this is like, it's like a sign or a reminder of my body. And as he breaks the bread and shares it with everybody, he's saying, in the same way, my body is going to be broken soon when I die on the cross. And when you eat the bread in this way of remembering, in the future, you'll always remember, oh yes, Jesus died on the cross to pay for my sins. And he says something else. He says, it's not just bread we're going to use. What else are they going to use? Donna?
Wine.
Wine. Okay, so we've got some wine over here as well. So he's got some cheap jug of wine. I don't know if he had a glass jug or a glass, but I put the wine there. And he says to his disciples this, then he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Now again, it's not really his blood. He didn't squeeze his blood out into a jar. That wouldn't be very nice. But he's given us wine. And wine, I think the colour of wine helps us to think about blood. And it might sound a weird thing, but he's saying when you do this nice thing, when you eat and drink together, when you eat bread and drink wine, it's going to be a way of helping you to remember how your sins got paid for. Because the wine being poured out, he says it's a bit like when my blood got poured out, or when it will be poured out when I die on the cross. And now guys, many of you don't do this yet, do you? You don't eat the bread and drink the wine. But the day will come when maybe when you're older and we're in the service together and we'll be doing that. And it will be a lovely way of remembering what Jesus said. And he says, and I want you to remember how I died, because when you remember how I died and why I died, you'll remember how your sins got paid for.